You want to try that again, Brock?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I'm ready.
Ready in 5, 4, 3.
These nuts.
That was epic. That was so cool.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
All the angelic choir comes in. Like, ah, shit. Here we go again. Then the mob breaks. But then having the 20th Century Fox still played at the very beginning. Welcome to the Dropped Culture Podcast, everybody. This is a podcast that picks up the piece of pop culture that you forgot about or missed, shines it up real nice, and then crams it in your ear holes. I'm Brock, and over here next to me I have...
Mitchadiah Longbottom. What up?
After him we have...
Dan. Just Dan.
All right, we're all at the Drop Culture Podcast Studios in Manitou Springs, Colorado.
That's not the names that we agreed to say at the beginning. It's okay. No. Anyways, moving on.
What was I supposed to say? What was I supposed to say?
Yeah, I'm not even going to say it. It's over.
No,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry.
So, this week's topic is, I keep burping. Excuse me. It is the mighty prolific band Suicide.
Yes.
The duo from New York City, New York, started in the early 70s.
Yeah.
And basically up until 2016 when Alan Vega died, on my birthday, as a matter of fact.
Their first album came out in what, 77?
1977, but they had been playing before that.
Yeah,
so,
for quite a while, right?
Yeah. They, Alan Vega and Martin Rev, they never quit. They had recorded all of their stuff in such a crazy fashion, and we'll get into that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
They did so many different things, and they were the actual true punks of punk rock. I would almost have to say, more than anybody else.
They were definitely some of the founding fathers for sure.
Oh man, if you put Iggy Pop as the godfather of punk rock, then if you want to look at it as a mob family, the Dons are the Ashton brothers, James Williamson from the Stooges. Then you got Alan and Martin, I mean, and...
Well, they even cite that. I know that they opened for the Stooges at one point, but they even cited them as inspiration.
Well, that was really basically how the whole idea got its auspicious start, for real, because... Alan Vega had seen the Stooges in New York and was like, damn, that's confrontational. I want to do that.
Right.
He was an idea guy, Alan Vega was, at the time, he was already pretty old compared to everybody else, and then just kind of blew everybody out of the water because they just didn't compromise.
Right.
They were one of those bands that to the end of their anything, because technically it still hasn't ended, really.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if they really have any older recordings that they're going to bring back up, anything like that, but
right.
But I would say that this is probably, to me personally, one of the greatest pieces of music, their first album ever created. By far, I think it is 100% like it is pure. if I could put it that way, it is a pure form of just unadulterated music.
100%.
No compromise.
Yeah,
Very melodic.
It's melodic and then it's chaotic. It's
well, they made what they wanted. You know, they did. Like you said, like you don't get the second side. Was it Johnny Raindrops or whatever?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Frankie Teardrop.
Frankie Teardrop. What did I say? Johnny Raindrops.
Johnny Raindrops. That's pretty good. Johnny Raindrops.
But you don't get Frankie Teardrop with that with somebody who doesn't. You don't get that from someone who is compromising with anyone, because nobody's going to be like, yeah, that's a great idea for you to make that song. You know what I mean?
Oh my God. Yeah.
But they did it, and it's cool. It's kind of a cool song.
It's a great song.
I don't know if it's great, but it's cool. It's a good song.
I think that whole first record, if you have never heard it, you need to go out and get it and then give it more than just one spin. You have to really dive into it to really understand what it is. Because the first time that I heard it too was like, what the fuck is this? And then really just kind of diving into it was like, oh my God, what are they trying to do? They're not trying to do anything.
I will say the first time I've heard these guys was, well, and we'll get into that, but the biggest thing to say is that I really only was familiar with that first album. And I didn't even really know that I was familiar with that much of the first album, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And then like maybe a song or two off a couple other albums. But that was all the knowledge I had of this band, before we did this.
I just got a book that they had made right before Alan's death too. And this guy was trying to compile a list of really big acts in the 60s and 50s, 60s and 70s, all New York, right? And just kind of put this deal together, and then it kind of turned into the Suicide biography, because so many people in those days will cite Suicide as being the band that made them really challenge.
It's a long list.
Yeah. Oh man. Everybody that was at that point too, people that were completely confrontational in music, got that idea and got the style and the swagger and just the we don't give a fuck attitude about everything from Suicide. And Suicide, again, I guess they were two Jewish guys, pretty much, that just, one was classically trained almost, and then the other one was like an artist.
Right. So
then they get together and they form this avant-garde, weird, crazy synth style, and it wasn't even that. And they're sided with starting so many different musical genres as well.
Well, I heard it in an interview where they said that they were both looking for something different than what they were doing.
Yeah.
When they crossed paths. And they found out that was their different. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. It was like, let's put together what we got with what we got, and let's see what we come up with.
Absolutely.
And just hours and hours. And there's no place to play in the early 70s.
Right.
In New York. And it was one of those things to where they just honed their craft. They really did. They were just there. They were doing it because they were trying to figure out how to live, by doing what they loved. And back then you could almost do that. You could almost really get by with doing the small gigs that they did.
Absolutely.
Or Alan Vega with his art, it was just all over the place. They grew up in a time, when, the rockabilly, the real rock and roll was starting, they were very, very young at that point. So it was very impressionable to them. And to bring their style into something like that, which one was a jazz pianist,
Right.
And then just to be like, hey, let's just see what we could do,
Absolutely.
Let's just do it. Very few people have that attitude of, let's just do it. Why the fuck not?
Right.
And they did. They didn't give a shit. They didn't really care about what it sounded like because they loved it.
Right.
They just loved what they were doing. They knew it was something different. And whenever you're like that, then how can you not be prolific?
Well, I think it's amazing. Like they started doing, and I agree. I think it was amazing that when they started doing live shows, like people like booed them automatically, just like when they came out on stage.
Everybody hated them.
Yeah.
They hated them. Well, we'll start from the beginning.
Well, I do have a question before we get started. When was the first time you heard of Suicide, the band?
First time that I had heard of Suicide was from a movie called Punk Attitude.
Okay.
It came out years and years and years ago, and that was before the time of all this kind of where you could just pick up music anywhere.
Right.
So it was like, to me, it was like a word of mouth because I didn't know anybody else that listened to them, like Mission of Burma.
Right.
Not a lot of people listened to them. It was just something that was there, and it was just like, cool. And then seeing it on that movie, I was like, I got to check this out. And then I could download this stuff, and I downloaded Ghost Rider,
Right.
and was just completely hooked on it. Then come to realize that shit had been around in my life forever.
Right.
Especially like with the Crow soundtrack with Henry Rollins playing Ghost Rider.
I was going to say that's when I first heard of them at all.
Yeah.
And it was because a friend of mine at the time was like, yeah, this is a song by somebody else. Like, I didn't know that. I just love that album.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, check this out. And it was like a cassette tape that he had.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And like we played that, and I was like, okay. And the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know?
You don't really grasp what was going on unless you really sit there and get the feeling.
Yeah.
You have to
100%,
have it up
100%.
loud.
You have to have, not only have it up loud, but I mean, a context in your mind almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, what it was, anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then learning about it on that movie. I mean,
Sure.
I just dove headfirst into it and decided to never really look back because that was even before they were doing their re-releases and everything like that. So they were still getting cited by people like Depeche Mode, stuff like that, you know? I mean, they were there and they were always there, but they humbled themselves in a way that they decided that they would rather be influential like they were instead of super famous, you know? They didn't care about the fame part of it. Yeah, they had a lot of times where they probably thought, oh yeah, this is our next big one right here. And then they would just get shut down. And it sucks for the music press to really kind of hold people like that to a certain standard when
Right.
instead of just being like, hey, it's there. Listen to it. If you like it, you like it. You know,
Right.
People really talk shit about them.
Well, it's funny you say that because Rolling Stone specifically was like, this is terrible. And then like 40 years later was like, this is like one of the most influential albums ever.
Yeah. They put it on their top 100.
Yeah.
You know, it's consistently on everybody's list of greatest albums and greatest acts of all time. Which,
Well, it's definitely influenced so much a different style of music.
yeah, just like Iggy Pop.
Yep.
You know, you look at the Stooges. The Stooges were influenced. The Doors influenced the Stooges.
For sure.
You know, I mean, it goes all the way back. You know,
Yeah.
like Frank Sinatra influenced the Doors. You know,
Right.
What? Just crazy shit. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, and these guys, no compromise. And that's
pushed whatever boundaries they wanted to push. Didn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
To the limit, basically, and really to the limit. So let's kind of get into a little bit of their formation. I mean, bless you. They were active between 1970 and 2016.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was, come on, that's a hell of a run for somebody that nobody liked, right?
Right.
Alan Vega was their vocalist, and then you have Martin Rev. Now, Martin Rev was the instrumentalist. They don't really put, exactly what he played, but he did play on a Farfisa organ.
The Japanese organ.
Yeah, they had a very, very primitive drum machine that he literally, like, whenever they were forming Suicide, somebody had it for sale, and he rode a big, long train to go get there.
Yeah, it was
in
like
their basement.
$30 too.
Yeah, it was like so totally cheap, but
I think he had to go to Long Island.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they went to the basement, turned it on, but come to find out, the woman that owned it was these people's daughter, and she committed suicide, but she was writing poetry.
Right.
So
And she
they
had
already
this drum machine.
they already had the name, and it was like, well, and he looks at it and he's like, well, I could do something with this, and he just grabs it, and they create that Suicide sound.
Yeah,
the driving
100%.
beats, the synthetic, just fuzz boxed fucked up weird shit.
Yeah.
Because literally they took that organ and they hooked it up to all these electro-harmonics pedals, whatever was available, just to get these weird fucking sounds, you know?
yeah.
And that's when people were starting to really kind of knock off all the fuzz pedals and weird shit at the time. And